Coming up in a newscast, President Yoon Suk-yeol is in the third and final leg of his three-nation tour. The South Korean leader is set to sit down with his Canadian counterpart to ramp up cooperation in various fields. The USS Ronald Reagan arrived in Busan. The American nuclear-powered aircraft carrier and strike group will take part in a combined exercise with South Korean forces. 4 areas of Ukraine controlled by Russia and pro-Moscow forces kick off referendums on joining Russia. The voting is widely condemned by the West as illegitimate and a precursor to illegal annexation. Hello, hope you're wrapping up the week well. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. President Yoon Suk-yeol is on the final leg of a three-nation tour. In Toronto, the South Korean leader addressed experts on AI, explaining the potential for bilateral cooperation in that field. A summit with his Canadian counterpart is also planned. Moon starts us off.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol landed in Toronto Thursday afternoon on the third and final leg of his three-nation tour. Upon arrival in Canada's largest city, President Yoon headed to the University of Toronto for a meeting with experts and researchers in the field of artificial intelligence.
한국과 캐나다 양국이 서로 협력한다면 인공지능 분야에서 새로운 도약을 이루어낼 것으로 기대합니다. 새 정부는 향후 양국 간 인공지능 분야에 대한 협력을 적극 지원해 나가겠습니다.
His office explained that Toronto is Canada's biggest economic hub and a global leader in digital technology and the AI industry.
I think it's safe to say that the final leg of the President's tour is aimed at 2 primary goals. 1, for the nation to become a leader in the new digital world order, and 2, to become an AI powerhouse.
Learning from the experience of Canada, the senior presidential aide believes South Korea has begun its journey to becoming an AI powerhouse, moving beyond the realm of semiconductors. The trip to Canada will also take President Yoon to Ottawa for a sit-down with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to discuss working even more closely on energy, including EV batteries, critical minerals, emerging technologies, and securing supply chain resiliency. It's here in Toronto, the world's emerging tech superpower with the fastest growing tech market in North America, that President Yoon kicks off his very first bilateral visit overseas as president. Now, donning his chief executive cap, he'll commit the rest of his tour to deepen collaboration with Canada to generate more economic growth for both countries. Moon, Arirang News, Toronto.
President Yoon also met with North American investors and business people. Through these sessions, he secured investments in South Korea worth over $1 billion from 7 firms, including chip and battery makers. Yoon Jung-min fills us in.
7 North American businesses, including chip makers, battery makers, and energy firms, have presented investment plans to South Korea worth $1.15 billion. And the proposals were accepted at an event for American investors hosted by Seoul's Trade Ministry on Thursday in New York, where South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol sent a business-friendly message.
한국에 투자하면 확실한 성과가 나올 수 있도록 책임지고 지원하겠습니다.
The South Korean president renewed his promise to create an environment that is good for business, for which he'll try to cut red tape and foster an economy led by the private sector and markets as Seoul tries to gain the upper hand in the global technology race. Among the 7 investors are renowned semiconductor equipment maker Applied Materials and lithium metal battery maker Solid Energy System, both of which have plans to create R&D centers in South Korea, while Canadian power firm Northland Power is considering building a wind power generation complex.
여러분들의 투자가 한국과 북미의 공급망 협력, 또 첨단 산업의 경쟁력 강화, 나아가 굳건한 경제 안보 동맹 유지에 큰 도움이 될 것이라고 저는 확신합니다.
Wrapping up his 3-day stay in New York, President Yoon had a lunch meeting with the President of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, and former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, during which he revisited expanding Seoul's contribution on the global stage, something he had already mentioned in his UN speech. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The top diplomats of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo met to discuss regional and global issues. The officials underscored the importance of their trilateral partnership. They also expressed concerns over North Korea's destabilizing statements about using nuclear weapons. Kim Yo-san shares with us what was discussed.
The top diplomats of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan sat down for a three-way meeting in New York on Thursday. Speaking beforehand, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken highlighted the importance of the cooperation that exists between the three countries.
The United States, Japan, Korea, we have the most vital bilateral relationships, but we also have this trilateral partnership. And
he also highlighted how vital the partnership is in order to tackle regional and global issues. According to the U.S. State Department, the three countries reaffirmed that a North Korean nuclear test will be met with a strong and resolute response. In a joint statement adopted by the three foreign ministers and published by Washington, the three also expressed serious concerns over the regime's escalatory message in relation to its use of nuclear weapons. The meeting was the first of its kind in about 2 months, since the three met in Bali on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting in July. After the meeting, which lasted for about an hour, Seoul's Foreign Minister Park Jin told reporters that the three countries share the same view with regard to the need to coordinate closely to tackle threats from North Korea. He then added that the meeting was meaningful and served as an opportunity to improve bilateral relations between Seoul and Tokyo. Kim Yo-san, Arirang News.
The government publicly called for activists to stop sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets into the north. Such activities are viewed as something that apparently antagonized the regime. The Unification Ministry emphasized it also puts South Koreans in danger. Han Sung-woo has the details.
South Korea's Unification Ministry has once again urged activists not to send anti-Pyongyang leaflets into North Korea, a practice that certain civic groups have continued despite numerous requests from the government to stop.
Protecting the lives and safety of the South Korean people is the government's top priority, and so we felt the need to repeat our call to stop behaving in this way that puts people at unnecessary risk.
In a briefing on Friday, the Unification Ministry's deputy spokesperson, Lee Hyo-jung, also said there's no scientific basis to Pyongyang's claim that it was the propaganda leaflets flown over the border on balloons that first carried COVID-19 into North Korea. Last month, leader Kim Jong-un's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong blamed South Korea for what she called crimes against humanity and warned of strong retaliation.
It is very regrettable and inappropriate that North Korea is distorting the facts and talking about retaliating against our people. The South Korean government will respond sternly and decisively to any threats or provocations from the North.
The ministry's statement comes amid speculation that activists could send more leaflets across the border to mark North Korea Freedom Week, starting Sunday. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Amid heightened tensions on the peninsula, the USS Ronald Reagan arrived in Busan. The American nuclear-powered vessel and its strike group will take part in a combined exercise later this month. Pyeonji files this report from aboard the aircraft carrier.
The American aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, and its strike group have arrived in South Korea. There are 3 ships in total, including the guided missile cruiser, the USS Chancellorsville, and the guided missile destroyer, the USS Barry. The deck of this enormous supercarrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, can carry 80 aircraft, including F-18 Super Hornets and F-35 fighters. The aircraft carrier is here in Busan to take part in combined naval exercise with South Korean forces. This is the first time in almost 5 years that a U.S. aircraft carrier is in the country for a combined exercise since late 2017, when North Korea carried out its sixth and most powerful nuclear test. The South Korean Navy said it plans on demonstrating the strength of the bilateral alliance through the strike group's visit.
It's been a while since the strike group visited Busan, so through this visit, we plan to enhance the combined defense readiness and reaffirm the alliance between the South Korean and U.S. navies.
The visit of the aircraft carrier that can carry almost 5,000 sailors comes at a time when Seoul and Washington both declared that North Korea appears to have completed all necessary preparations to carry out a nuclear test. And as the North recently passed a law that allows a preemptive nuclear strike to protect itself.
The port visit of USS Ronald Reagan to Busan and to the Republic of Korea is a clear and visible presence and commitment of the United States' clear understanding and commitment to the alliance.
It also comes after South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and U.S. President Joe Biden agreed during their summit in May to deploy U.S. strategic assets on the Korean Peninsula in a timely and coordinated manner. The Allies' naval forces will conduct combined drills in waters off the east coast of South Korea later this month. Peunji, Arirang News, aboard the USS Ronald Reagan.
Elsewhere around the world, voting on whether to join Russia began in 4 Ukrainian regions occupied by pro-Moscow forces on Friday. It's being held in Luhansk, Kherson, and partly Russia-controlled Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk until Tuesday local time. The Kremlin says it's an opportunity for residents to express their opinion, but Kyiv and Western allies call the move illegitimate and a sham. Citing security reasons, in-person voting will only be available on the last day. Officials will bring ballot boxes to people's homes during the first 4 days. In Donetsk and Luhansk, which the Kremlin recognizes as independent, voters will be asked whether they agree with becoming part of Russia. But in Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, they'll also have to vote on the secession of their regions from Ukraine and forming an independent state. Results are likely to be in favor of Moscow, as a similar vote in Crimea in 2014 showed 97% of voters were in favor of annexation. EU leaders are poised to impose additional sanctions on Russia. This comes in response to Moscow's recent call for partial military mobilization, which prompted public panic in that country and stoked anger in the West. Yi Seung-jae brings the updates.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of this year, the EU has imposed 7 rounds of sanctions against Russia, along with complementary measures and a long list of blacklisted high-profile people and companies. However, with Russian President Vladimir Putin ordering a partial mobilization of reserve army forces to bolster the war in Ukraine, as well as referendums in the Luhansk and Donetsk regions beginning Friday, the EU is preparing for yet another fresh package of sanctions. Speaking to CNN during her visit to New York this week, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says Putin is showing his desperation, calling on personnel that is less trained, less experienced, and less motivated. She added that such actions by Russia call for sanctions from the EU. So what would the 8th round of EU sanctions against Russia target? According to the European Commission chief, the new penalties will focus on individuals and entities that support the invasion of Ukraine and on additional export controls on civilian technology as Russia moves to a full war economy. Some say that despite the sanctions, there's no end in sight to war in Ukraine. But von der Leyen believes the sanctions have so far been successful, as the Russian economy has been hit hard and the military is losing ground against Ukrainian forces. Yi Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here in the nation, as the daily COVID-19 tally continues to decline, South Korea decided to completely lift outdoor mask mandate. The changes take effect from Monday. The rule for individual was lifted in May, but was kept in place for gatherings of over 50 people. Still, indoor mask wearing will be required for the time being. The KDCA reported that 97% of the population has coronavirus antibodies based on a sample of 10,000 people. Authorities found that over 57% acquired it through natural infection. This means a considerable number have recovered from COVID without reporting they're infected. On Friday, new cases came to about 29,000. South Korea is on course to become the first in Asia to sign an FTA with Israel. The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs Committee passed a bill that approves the ratification of the trade deal. Once given final approval at a plenary session and subsequently at a cabinet meeting, Seoul will be exporting automobiles and parts with zero tariffs. Also passed during the meeting a separate bill that approves the ratification of an FTA with Cambodia that eliminates import tariffs for agricultural products. As part of efforts to support innovative growth in the private sector, public access to resources like data that belongs to government institutions will be granted. Private companies will also have access to government-held patents. Ji-young provides a glimpse of what to expect.
South Korea is opening data and resources held by the key government institutions to those in the private sector who can safely and securely utilize them to create value and innovative growth. In a meeting Friday on the management of public institutions, Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said the government is coming up with ways to strengthen cooperation between the public and the private sector. For example, by releasing medical data held by the National Health Insurance Service, the government expects to help private companies in predicting patterns of infectious diseases and demands for medical treatments.
Public institutions, which are paid for by taxpayers, have a responsibility to give back to the public what they've earned through their massive resources and capabilities.
By November, the government is going to give the private sector access to high-quality data held by public institutions in 10 key areas, including pensions, medical care, and real estate. Also, 20% of unused patents held by public institutions in high-demand fields, including medicine, biology, and telecommunications, will be available for use free of charge. The ministry said this could create an economic ripple effect of 1 trillion won, or about $710 million. Facilities at government institutions will be open to the public as well, including meeting rooms and gyms. And there'll be more support for small and medium-sized private companies.
By actively matching skilled small and medium-sized companies with demand for public institutions' R&D, the government will help these firms grow their market share.
Such cooperation, he said, will result in more assistance for their expansion overseas. The government is also revising a number of other regulations on public institutions and plans to unveil the changes early next year. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Consumer prices have been skyrocketing in recent months, from dining out to grocery shopping. Concerns grew especially ahead of kimchi making season. Lee Dae-yeon went out to hear directly from the people.
평균적으로 외식하면 얼마 정도 드나요? 한 끼당 15,000원 이상은 드는 것 같아요. 보통 서울에서 먹는다 치면은. 그러면은 그 예전이랑 비교해서 조금 많이 올랐다고 느끼시나요? 2배 이상 오른 것 같아요. 커피값이 많이 오른 것 같아요. 어디 앉아서 먹으면 7,000원까지도 비싼 데는 비싸니까 그 정도?
Consumer prices have risen across the board as many complain about the rising prices of dining out. And some citizens say it's making them hesitant to buy groceries.
혹시 어떤 품목이 조금 많이 올랐다고 느끼세요, 장 보시면서?
채소 같은 경우에 또 좀 여러 차례 장 보다 보면 가격이 오른 걸 좀 느끼지 않나.
김장 시즌도 좀 다가오잖아요. 네네네. 근데 좀 부담이 되실 것 같은데 좀 어떠세요? 좀 양을 줄이거나 하실 계획이 있으신가요?
그냥 담가져 있는 걸로 사 먹거나 그냥 그렇게 하려고 그러거든요. 네, 재료값도 너무 비싸고 그래서.
Inflation affects a lot of people, but there are people who are being seriously impacted by the rising prices, like those in the lower income brackets.
These are the 3 side dishes that will be delivered to lower-income households. Nutritious meals like these are costly, and eating healthy is not easy for people in the lower-income brackets, especially as consumer prices are skyrocketing.
I have zero income, so I tend to go grocery shopping less than before. I'm conscious of every penny I spend. Prices are soaring, and with no income, it's frightening.
81-year-old Kim Sun-gil has to move out of his house soon, as it's in an area designated for redevelopment. Now having to look for somewhere to live, the consumer price rises are making his situation even more difficult.
There's no financial support from the government. All I'm receiving is my national pension and old age securities.
A Korean Red Cross official says rising prices are also a heavy burden for the organization too.
We cannot reduce the amount of food we provide, but prices of ingredients are soaring. That's why we try to get more donations. But with the rising costs of living, donors tend to be pickier. We are pleading for more help for these people.
Consumer price hikes hit the low-income households the hardest, the people who are already on a tight budget. The government should closely monitor the difficulties they face and take control of the situation. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, the first ever Seoul International Jewelry and Accessory Show kicked off on Friday. From diamonds to pearls and sapphires, the event showcases this year's most valuable items. Kim Jung-sil takes us closer to the showcase of All That Glitters.
If you are one of those people who think that diamonds are a girl's best friend, then be sure to check out the Seoul International Jewelry and Accessory Show. The new event kicked off on Friday with 90 jewelry makers from across the country taking part to attract customers and buyers not only in South Korea but from around the world. One of the highlights is being able to try on items using AR. It was developed by a CES Innovation Award-winning South Korean company and uses augmented reality to let consumers try on accessories without having to go to the store. But how does it work?
So if you want to try on these earrings, for example, you click on them, and when you appear on your screen, voila, you're wearing them on the screen. And you can try on as many as you want, like this.
A spokesperson from the company says the technology helps both the company and the customer.
Using our service, customers can try things on very easily. So what they do is they try on many different items, leading to more sales. And from the company's perspective, the return rate is lower, as the actual product doesn't vary too much from the AR image.
Another highlight of the event is the online business conference session with potential overseas buyers. The organizers said they introduced this feature due to the pandemic. Buyers from around 10 countries, including the US, Japan, and China, took part in Friday's online business session.
The goal is to attract many overseas buyers and increase export opportunities and sales in our jewelry industry.
The event also hosts various seminars to target overseas markets and runs until Sunday. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
For this weekend, typical autumn weather conditions are expected for the capital region. Under clear skies, big contrast in temperatures of nearly 10 degrees are expected. Drastic fluctuation in daily temperatures can weaken our immune system, so make sure to dress warmly. And mostly sunny skies will take over for Seoul tomorrow, but we'll see increasing cloud coverage on Sunday. UV radiation will get stronger across the nation by the afternoon. Do consider wearing a hat or sunscreen when heading out. The peak hours for sun exposure are in between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. And as for the air quality, we'll have no concerns about fine dust at all. The entire nation will see air quality standing in the normal to good categories. Most regions will be under clear skies for the morning hours. Lows in Seoul will be starting off at 13 degrees. Daily highs will be 1 to 2 degrees higher than today. Seoul and Daejeon will be reaching 24, Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 25 degrees. For the time being, no rain is in the forecast, and next week, the capital region will see warmer daytime temperatures. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. From all of us here at Arirang News, thank you for watching.